investment should retain and increase employment. Unfortunately, what we see, investment are reducing the employment in various forms. So this can't be agreed to. Then the maintenance and improvement of industrial relations. Kerala is a good example. We have seen that in the last few years, industrial relations is maintained, that we had no strikes or difficulties, but that is not so everywhere. All public sector also. Healthy ancillaries to be developed, because we also find a problem on this. And then the transformation, information sharing, transparency and participation. See, there was a bill made long back when VP Singh was the Prime Minister. He brought out a bill called Employee Participation Management. It is still in the cold storage. It has never seen the light of the day. Nothing is happening. Periodically we remove that from the cupboards of the labor department, clean this and put it back. This is what we do. And then image building, we normally do that. Redefining and better utilization of assets is a very important thing. Many public sector assets are wrongly misused. What we were saying, privatization, my friend was telling, privatization is a mother of all scams. All privatization has taken place so far of public sector, at least in the central sphere as well as many state spheres. These are all mother of all scams. This is what we have seen. The examples are many. Training, retraining, modernization, technological upgradation, and employment of the new innovative roles. Latin American experiences, Yugoslav experiences, making workers manage or the owners, stock option, earlier VKRB Rao was giving, share, liquid participation, employee participation, as I told, the bill is still pending. Setting up of new safety nets. Public sector can do that, private sector will not do. Setting up of new safety nets or improving existing ones to mitigate and avert adverse effects on jobs and incomes. There are ALO provisions are this. This has to be explained, there is no time. Continued R&D efforts, it is not to reduce cost, but to benefit the customer also, not by reducing the wages. Management and the trade unions to focus on common issues. As I said earlier, lastly, I would like to say, there 100 years before, a great philosopher has said, you have nothing to lose but your chains. We have got a win over a world. Now also it is relevant in this sense. We have nothing to lose but the chains. Chains are not in the hands, chains are in the brains. That brains chains to be broken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all the speakers. And thank you very much again to Mr. Mahadevan for giving some leads as to how the environment, social and governance policies can be mainstreamed into state-owned enterprises, which he touched upon towards the end by referring to prospects of supply chain management, probably elimination of child labor through the supply chains and logistic chains, improving the connectivity between the operations and the environment, which was also pointed out yesterday by two chairmen of the sessions, saying that there might be a very huge opportunity, not just the private sector, leave that alone. We are concentrating on what state-owned enterprises, which always has stood for welfare and social good, can integrate in its own policies the issues of environment, issues of governance and issues of the society. Kerala particularly has a huge responsibility as well as an opportunity to protect the environment the way that it has done all these years, to make itself known as the God's own country, and also uphold the kind of achievements it has made in terms of the social development, which has come to be known as Kerala model. How can the state-owned enterprises partner with the government to further progress on this, make public commitment, make them integrated into the state-owned enterprises, and eventually may be able to make public statements at what has been achieved in specific terms for the social good, and also the kind of cascading effect it may have or it would create. Mumbai has particularly referred to the aspect of people, planet, and profit, and Ranjit has referred to what Sri Lanka has been doing broadly in terms of the SOE reform, and marginally on aspects of the ESG as well. Now I turn to the discussants and request you to make your very brief pointed comments on how you think, in your experience and observation, that the ESG policies can be integrated into the SOE policies or any aspect of the comments. Thank you. Mr. Altman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Big thank you for our speakers for your very valuable points. ESG is becoming increasingly recognized across the world, not only something that is nice to have, but something that is intrinsic in any well-run corporation, company, private or public. So I'm extremely pleased that this conference has a dedicated session on ESG. Yesterday, I spoke at some length about SOE, or state-owned enterprise, corporate governance. So today I will focus my brief comments only on the E and the S, the environmental and social aspects. Yesterday I also spoke about the need for clarity in terms of mandates and objectives for SOEs. And this applies very much in the realm of ESG. Take environment for example. What do we exactly mean by the environment? Are we talking about recycling efforts? Are we talking about carbon dioxide emissions, energy consumption? Similarly, in terms of social aspects, what are we looking at? Are we looking at health and safety, labor standards, employee satisfaction, product safety, customer satisfaction, community initiatives, anti-corruption measures, ethics programs, etc., etc.? So I think any SOE needs firstly to identify the areas of what specifically they are looking at. Then secondly, there needs to be a formulation of specific policies on each area, like health and safety, for instance. The policy would set out the company's values as well as objectives in this area. Thirdly, it's important that senior management or board level responsibility is identified for the implementation of that particular policy. Fourthly, I think it's important to set quantifiable targets for the implementation of each policy, against which progress then can be assessed. And fifthly and finally, there should be public reporting on ESG performance. Many companies in the world, state-owned enterprises, do this already. Yesterday we spoke about the need for SOEs for better improved transparency and disclosure. Such ESG reporting would not only make the ESG performance more disciplined, or ESG practices more disciplined, but it would also show the private sector an example for them to follow. Thank you.
Mr. Sin, would you like to come here or would you speak from there? Yeah, kindly.
At the outset, I would convey my thanks, profuse thanks, to my junior colleague, Inaram Karim, and his government, and his team of devoted civil servants who performed this feat that despite an opposite current, a very strong devastating current for privatization and demolishing public sector, it is possible for Kerala government to restore the vitality of the state public sector. This is an example, this is a message to spread all over the country, so that something is possible which is considered impossible, that has been made possible in Kerala. It is because, as my friend Prabhat Patnaik initially said, that nothing is miracle. The miracle is profound conviction and political will of the government to do it, and they have been successful. Likewise, since I hail from West Bengal, I will give one example. There the Lieutenant government, when came in 1977 to power, they also showed enormous political will and ideological conviction when they, under the limited jurisdiction of under the Indian Constitution, they implemented successfully land reform in West Bengal and set up wall-level democracy, decentralizing democracy, by forming panchayats in all villages. And that created not only interest in India, but abroad also. I met several scholars who came from different European universities to investigate how the rural scenario of Bengal has changed because of land reform and panchayat system. So it is a question of conviction and ideological conviction and political will. Now, this privatization that is taking place in different countries and what IMF World Bank is prescribing and forcing the government to do it, or governments are willingly, subserviently, they are doing it. It is not that some here commented the government's duty is to govern, nothing else. Is it the government's duty to only maintain the police force, home department, and the military, and control law and order and foreign invasion? What about the health? What about public health? What about the education? Government has the responsibility. Here comes the question of government intervention. If we have no time, but I look at the history of development of capitalism. Capitalism could not develop to this extent without the intervention of the capitalist government. Their policies got it developed. And the neoliberal economy regime could not be established in the whole world unless the government took measures for that. Boundaries of different states were abolished. Products may come, products may go, money may come, capital may go. Was it possible earlier? It was not possible earlier. It was done all by government intervention. Without government intervention, neither public sector nor private sector can develop. Japan's history, UK history, US history, all countries' history has shown it. So here also, public intervention is necessary for developing public sector. But we should not confuse public sector with socialist industries. In a capital society, public sector means nothing more than state capital with state property in the hands of the state. But that also has an utility in developing the country because that state capitalism counters the dominance of private monopoly capital. Here lies the difference. And in India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, when he initiated this public sector and built up big industries, which private sector did not venture to invest so much of money, steel, coal, etc., then he said that commanding height of the economy should be public sector. After Indira Gandhi, to a certain extent, that perception prevailed. But after that, it was diluted. Now, it is entirely reversed. Now, some speakers have said what happened in UK. True. In UK, USA, everywhere there is public sector. In the whole of Western Europe, good public sector and good social security benefit. And that was due to existence of Soviet Union, their nationalized industries. And social security measures in Soviet Union and the state industries in Soviet Union that to a great extent influenced the Western Europe also. So when Keynesian economics was introduced, at that time, United States government, UK government, and many governments followed suit to a certain extent that public sector, public health, public education, they should do it. Once upon a time, British National Health Service was considered as the best national health service in the world. But what is the plight of that health service now? Because earlier Labour Party and the present Labour Party is greatly different. Earlier Pandit Nehru's regime and today's regime is quite different. And meanwhile, Soviet Union has collapsed. And in Soviet Union also is a strange thing that in the same party's leaders, Lenin and Stalin, they built up socialism, they built up national industries. Same party's leader, this Yeltsin, Gorbachev, they demolished it because there was an ideological gap. there is gap and political will. So they're influenced by capitalism, they did it. They did it. But it had a setback effect all over the world. Now, another strong current is blowing, that is in Latin America. What is happening in Venezuela or happening in some other countries in Latin America? It is because of conviction that this capitalist economy and imperialist intervention must be resisted. That's why when the 15th September 2008, when Wall Street crashed, Wall Street means the nerve center of world capitalism, it crashed. Then huge bailout package. It is said that government should not invest in public industries. Then why the Bush government at that time, why the UK government at that time pumped in billions and millions of money, dollars, to rescue those fallen public sector? Why this? What is whose money? It is public money. Public money. With that, they rescued, tried to build out the biggest of the financial institutions, private financial institutions, who for their own crime fallen down. And to pull out those criminals, government spent millions of dollars. At that time, I read in some newspapers in Washington and New York, they compared it. Why Bush government is doing it? Why Bush government is doing it? Is it again building up because many of them were earlier private sector, public sector? Is he again building up private sector? And then they commented, I found one economist commented, yes, nationalization took place in Venezuela. But nationalization took place in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez simply took a decision in the government, issued orders, and all the gas and petroleum industries in Venezuela are nationalized. And to protect those industries from the attack of the enemies, he sent armies. Nationalization was complete. And here, Bush is spending millions of dollars to rescue those criminals. So, anyway, that is without government intervention, neither capitalism, nor socialism, nor anything can be built up. So, government duty is not only to govern by police and military, but also to see to it. Now, what extent this privatization has reached? In our country, we are witnessing in India that health is privatized. Now, only a minuscule of GDP or government budget spent for health, and it has been left to the private sector. What will happen to the poor? What will happen to the poor? It is not the government's responsibility? No. Let them die. Education. Now, minister says education will be privatized. What education they will give? It means my merit, my son's merit, my granddaughter's merit. It will be utilized by the private sector for reaping profit. To what degenerated aspect it has come down. So this private sector philosophy, it is a philosophy of destroying the entire people, entire population. Ultimately, what is happening in America? Huge unemployment. What has happened to the National Health Service in UK? Disaster situation. Nobody could survive by building up capitalism only. But it was required public sector for some reasons. Without reason, public sector has not come. Without reason, people are not thinking of socialism. So because there's reason, this public sector in a capitalist society is necessary, and in Kerala government, they have done it. Technical aspects are different. Efficient management, profit, viability, everything, and good management, transparency. These are technical aspects. First of all, I must clarify my conviction. I must clearly state my political will. Then only other things come. If that will is lacking, if that conviction is lacking, then everything will be lacking. So it is not a question of simply profit or efficiency or non-efficiency. It is a question of the right-wing thinking wind is blowing in the whole world. that everything should privatize, everything should be money. What we are seeing in India, I'm completing it, but what are you seeing in India? India, in the recent telecom scandal, nobody can forget. It is a telecom scandal. It's still continuing. Who are involved? Involved a common man, a worker? No. Involved big capitalists. And very, very big capitalists who have good name. Now, they are also figuring in the news how they lobbied, how they manipulated to profit by getting 2G spectrum. So it is a capitalism with parasitism, not only by industrial production, but by also other means they want to profit. So this sort of malady that has afflicted the country, not only our country, but all countries, it is only an alternative can save the whole humankind. And Kerala state government, with its limited capacity, in a limited way, they are showing that within this limitation, some public sector can be built, revived, and they can make profit out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sen. Can I throw the session open to the public? And if there are any questions from your side to any of the speakers, our discussants, our now it looks like everyone is quite keen to get on to the tea and then the valedictory. Okay, taking the cue, let me just say that we probably have discussed the very preliminary issues concerning the ESG policies and what can happen in future, but there are